Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen as normal, and we are going to talk to you today about a subject that comes up as a question quite a bit, which is, can you live where you want and legally save on taxes? So before we jump into that, please click, destroy that subscribe button. Encourage your friends to do the same. It really helps us out, and let's dive into it. Oh, and click the notification bell as well. Okay, so here's the thing that comes up a lot, right, is people get a little bit confused about the subject of where you pay tax, where you live, and how tax planning fits into this, all right? And I would say also kind of where you are legally resident. So this is, I would say maybe a little bit more in-depth discussion than I sometimes have on these. If you go and you look at some of our previous videos on residency, I try to explain to you kind of how international tax works, which is an often misunderstood topic, but I think a very relevant topic for a lot of people, right? So the concern for a lot of people is they say, hey, listen, you know, well, I want to go and live in Spain, and Spain has horrible taxes, right? So what can I do about, you know, the tax situation there? Well, here's the thing. Within any country's tax rules, there are ways to plan your taxes to optimize them, okay? Some are tougher to get around than others. For example, Australia, the ATO tend to be Nazis about a lot of different things. You know, in some other places, you know, they're, you know, maybe even worse. Denmark, places like this are pretty tough with their rules. Some, it's really easy. You know, I was talking to someone in Mexico the other day, and in Mexico, people get around taxes a lot. Not legally, probably, but, you know, they go and do this. And then there's, you know, proper tax planning where there's a lot of loopholes in the tax system, which happens in a bunch of different places as well. So you've got this whole balance, right? So I guess the first question really is, well, where do you want to live, right? And so if you live in a country that the tax system is really fair and you're, you know, really, or maybe even really generous, and you want to live there, well then, yeah, you can of course live in a country where you live there and the taxes are low and you know, can legally avoid taxes. Perfect, great. Sometimes this also brings up the question, though, of, okay, well, what do you mean by live, right? So if by live you mean, well, I have a legal residency there, you can very often have a legal residency permit without paying taxes in somewhere. And this is really common with golden visa programs, right? So you have these people who retire to some place and they get a residency permit which allows them to spend maybe 12 months a year there or whatever it is, but they aren't necessarily planning on living there. So they don't necessarily trigger local tax residency. So the first important thing to realize is that if you are not resident in a country, then generally speaking, you are not subject to their tax rules and you're not taxable there, okay? Generally. And tax residency is different than legal residency, as I've discussed in other videos. So you can go and check that out in some of our other video content. So can you live someplace for part of the year and not be tax resident there? Yes, that is very often possible, okay? If your ties are insufficient, if you're not there for long enough, generally speaking, pretty much everywhere, if you spend more than 6 months a year there, and sometimes it's a bunch less, but more than 6 months a year there, then you're going to be tax resident. So if you're saying, hey, can I spend more than 6 months a year there, then, you know, you're probably subject to their tax rules. We're going to get into a minute how you deal with that, right? On the other hand, if you say, okay, well, you know, you have a home there and you're there for 4 months out of the year, well, and for a lot of people with digital nomads today and online businesses, etc., maybe that's viable. Maybe you say, hey, listen, I want to live in Spain, but I really only like it for about 4 months a year during the summer. And, you know, maybe even I say July is too hot or August is too hot or something, so I'm going to be there, you know, let's say August and September, May and June, and that's it. And, you know, you could probably be good. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. The next thing is to say, okay, well, within this whole framework where we say, okay, what are we picking from? There are rules that sometimes allow you to move to a place with a favorable tax treatment. So, for instance, right, I was just talking to a close friend and client who just moved to Malta, and Malta has some pretty attractive tax rules, right? So if a person wants to move to Malta, if a person wants to move to Cyprus, if they want to move to Portugal, there's the NHR program. If they want to move to Spain, there may be the La Ley Beckham program. Again, not necessarily for everybody, but certain situations. So depending on the country, there may be some residency programs that give you favorable treatment. There's a thing in Greece now for pensioners with 7% tax. There's another one in Greece that gives you a $100,000 maximum tax, right? So, or 100,000 euro, sorry. So it depends on the country. There can be some programs that can allow you to do that. So be aware of those. Maybe those will work for you, right? Beyond that, are there things that you can do? Are you automatically subject to tax that's going to be really potentially quite high in some of these places, right? Maybe you're in UK, maybe you're in Canada, maybe you're in the US, maybe you're, where? Well, not necessarily, right? So let's start off with the fact that different types of income are taxed differently. So sometimes you're in a situation where they tax, for instance, capital gains. Income may not be taxed, right? They may not tax dividends. Sometimes they have some sort of a remittance system, so they don't tax it. Sometimes they have a territorial system, so that if the income is earned outside of the country, then it's not taxable. So in any number of these situations, you may end up in a situation where you're not taxable, or you're taxed at a lower rate, right? Generally speaking, a lot of countries have investment income taxed at a lower rate than earned income. Beyond this, there are often ways to structure international plans that can help you out with that, okay? So this is kind of like we're going from, hey, very easy, to progressively getting more and more complex. So here's the thing. Most of the time when we're dealing with people, we're not dealing with people looking solely at personal income. We're looking at they have a business, and there's business income to consider. And it's much, much easier to structure business income at a favorable tax rate and a favorable tax environment than personal income, all right? And so as a result, it may be possible that your company, depending on the nature of the company, and there's lots of factors, so if you're interested, contact us and we'll go through the nuances with you. If you're in that situation, you may say, okay, well, I'm going to pay tax personally, but my company can be much lower tax or potentially zero tax. Okay, that's possible. Next, maybe you're in a situation where there's some fancy structures. So for instance, in the US, there's a deferral structure you can use in some cases. We call it the ASC structure that's helpful. And so sometimes you can take advantage of that. Or you can take advantage of some planning where at least you get lower overall tax or better write-offs, right? So it just depends on your situation, what's going to work out best. Now, the final thing that can come in, which is relevant, especially for people who are immigrating into something, is you may be able to do some sort of a trust structure, okay? So this really fits into kind of your overall life plan where you say, okay, well, here's where I am, here's where I want to be, how do I get here most optimally? And maybe I'm going to have various steps along the way, right? Maybe you're, I don't know, let's just say you're in Australia and you're like, okay, well, I know I want to leave Australia and I know that I would like to live for a while in Spain, but I don't plan on living my whole life in Spain. Maybe after I'm going to leave Spain and I'm going to go somewhere else, I'm going to be there for 5 years, and then, maybe I want to move to, I don't know, someplace like UK, right? Well, there may be some ability to plan that really effectively, and in particular using trusts. Trusts are like kind of the ultimate vehicle that it's very complicated. It can, create all sorts of issues, and you have to make sure it's really well planned. But if you're in a situation where you can afford to pay the fees, which tend to be fairly substantial to do it right, you could possibly set something up that would help with that. And so you get kind of like pre-immigration trusts and these types of structures. So anyway, the bottom line is, can you live where you want and legally pay little or no tax? In most cases, there's an ability to optimize. Very often, you can get a lot less tax, but in a bunch of cases, you will not be able to get zero tax. So, we just have to figure out what's applicable to you, and part of that is going to be designing actually how your business functions, or what form your income comes in, as well as your corporate structure, as well as kind of your life. So anyway, if you want help with that, reach out to us. There's a link below. You can book a call with me, www.clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. I hope this helps you guys. Please click subscribe, destroy that subscribe button. Actually, I think probably you only want to click it once because then otherwise it probably comes off. But click it, get it on there, click the notification bell to get updated on our future videos. I try to share really good information. If you have something you want to hear about, put it in the comments. I read them all, so we'll go and check it out. If you want other help, you can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Anything to do with corporations, internationally, international tax, asset protection, payment processing, citizenships, residencies, etc. Hopefully that helps. We'll see you guys on the next video.